Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and today we are on our last block of the buttonhole portion of our stitch sampler. This is block 8. We're going to be doing some fun circular motifs today. Before we get started, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you who are new here, who've subscribed recently. I'm deeply grateful for each and every one of you. I also wanted to let you know garden season is just beginning here in Colorado. And I do have a seasonal job working at the garden center, so if my videos are a day or two late, it's just because my work schedule has been really busy that week. Thank you for your patience with that. Let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be doing several circular motifs. I put a 4-seam block in, even though we're going to be stitching 2 that are seams, and then we're going to be stitching about 6 motifs, 2 of which are pretty small and quick. We're going to do this first seam along here. We're going to do a stitch called a Rosette Stitch. Now these can be done either in a continuous line or they can be done in kind of individual clumps. We're going to go ahead and do it as a whole line. I think it's a nice seam stitch, and if you're looking for something that provides sort of a grassy look or something that will have multiple stems, it works really well for that. I would like to put 3 little motifs along this short seam, and it's only 2 inches long. Dividing 3 into 2 isn't always straightforward, so I thought I'd show you a quick little trick that I use from time to time. I just get a piece of paper that's as long as the seam that I want to stitch, and I'm just going to snip it off at that length, and then I'm going to fold it in thirds. And before I press any of them, I just sort of play with it until I think it's going to about line up. I think we're good there. We're really looking for an approximation. It's not going to be exact. And so now I have 3 segments on that. For that one, I can just look at where each segment is. And here, let me just draw a little line there. You can see each segment. And now I really want to go halfway in between. I'm just going to eyeball what I think looks halfway. And I'm just going to make a little mark at those halfway points. And I know that those are the locations where I want the center of my motif. For this stitch, we're going to start off over here on the seam. Now I'm looking at that, and this runs pretty close over here. I think we're going to be good though. We're going to be going up from each one of those. And we're really going to make just this little tiny arc here. And I would not draw this out if I'm stitching that, but I'm just putting it in there so you can sort of see what is going to be happening. So we're getting from one stitch to the other. So here's my center, and we're going to kind of cluster these buttonhole stitches right in here. So the base of our buttonhole is right down here at the bottom. And we're going to bring them up so the centers are longer than the outsides. And I'm coming back. For this particular spot, I'm coming back a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And I'm coming over from my center knot. And I'm making my first buttonhole stitch. I'm going to do 5, and I want the middle one to come straight up. So I'm just kind of judging this on that. I wouldn't mind if it sort of rounds out rather than being triangular shaped. And then I'm going to come up just a little above and to the side. And this is one that I usually end up scoop stitching. So let's try that here. Sometimes when you have it in the frame, that's a little more difficult. And then I'm going to come out. And again, I'm coming out to the side here. And a little more out to the side. Got our thread of our muslin. So if that's happening, just take your scissors and snip that off so that it doesn't get in your way. And so there we have one little rosette. Now we're going to come back and do the next one. And so this stitch is going to go all the way over. And I'm going to come out here, and I'm coming back. Not quite to my mark, but getting pretty close to it. And like I said, I'm going to scoop stitch these the way I normally would stitch it. And these are pretty simple and straightforward. That one's going straight up and down. Now we're going out a little bit to the far side. And we're just making that little curve on the bottom of it. You can do this with more than 5 stitches. I've done it with 7. I do feel like it looks better when you have an even number in that. And I've actually done it with more than 5. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to put them either side here. So maybe let's do that with this next one. Let's show you what it looks like with 6, which is just slightly different. So instead of coming straight up, I'm just either side of center there. And I got to where my thread is down and it just tangled, so I'm having to untwist so I can move my needle down the thread. And now I'm going to come and I'm going to try and do it as symmetrical as I can on the far side. So for me on this sampler, it'll look a little lopsided with having this one that's a little bit different, but I just wanted to show you the possibilities of that. There we go. And then I'm just going to take that straight stitch all the way off into my seam allowance. And actually I really like it with the 6 on that. I think I like the 6 better than the 5. Little bushier effect. You can do them pretty close together or spread far apart. It just depends on what your preference is. You could alternate size of your clumps as you go. Just depends on what you're looking for. So let me knot that off and then we'll go and try the next one. For the next one, I would like to do the other seam one along this seam here. So I think I need to rotate my block. Again, just to make it easier for me. If I'm working in hand, I think I've mentioned this in other videos, I'm always turning the work to make it more comfortable for me. And I think that helps you achieve nicer work. So there we go. So we're going to do this one on here. Now for this one, I just want 2 motifs. That's almost the same amount of distance. I've got my marks at my 1/3 mark. I'm going to make a mark there and a mark there. But as I'm looking at this one, it's going to run pretty close to that. Is that going to be okay? I'm actually wondering if I need to scoot it that way. Just because it measures out that that's where the location is, sometimes optically you want to shift it a little bit just to give a little more space. I'm going to move it over about 1/8 of an inch and that will do the job. Now if I want to remove the marks I don't want, I've just got a damp Q-tip here. Rub that over and that will erase. That will do for now. This one we're going to make what look like sunrises or sunsets. I'm going to use my circle template here. These big templates on the frame seem a little bit overkill. I know I want to be a little smaller than that. That's how far apart they are. If I do it that way, then they're literally going to run right into one another. And I want just a little bit of a gap in between them. So I could just even go down one size. I think I'd like to go this size. On this circle template, we have these little lines, so I'm just lined up on the seam and then the center top, so I kind of know where I'm at. Now on this one, I'm going to make that just a smidgen darker. I need a little one on the inside of it as well. I want it to look fairly symmetrical. I'm going to show you my sampler. I want to just see how big those circles were. That looks like I did a 7/8 inch circle. Let's look and play with this and see if maybe a 7/8 inch circle would work on here, and we'll just offset it because that was a really nice size and I liked the way it looked. And we can fit that on there. It's going to be a little snug. I think it will do the job. And then we're going to go with the inside circle. So I'm just going to look at this one that I really like the proportions of and see if I can match. To be truthful, a lot of times when I'm doing this, I'm just looking and playing with what feels comfortable to me. And I often will do that with a template. A lot of times I just start stitching. So let's go with that. So we just ignored our center marks almost completely on this one. I'm just trying to line up with the outside, judging where my center might be. This one we're going to work not as a long continuous seam, but we're going to work it as individual motifs. The base of our stitch is going to be here in this center arc here. So we are going to go here. I'm actually going to make a straight stitch here because we're going to come up to here and go down. So we're going to always be going down on the outside, coming up on the inside. So I'm going to pull that back just a little bit, and I'm going to pretend I'm coming up on the inside of it. All right. Now I have to think about how many things do I want. So I'm going to think about wanting one straight up and down vertically, and then we'll go halfway in between for that, and then I want one halfway in between for that. So you can always mark that. I don't usually do that. The first one I'm going to mark so that you can see what I'm doing. So I mark it that way, and then I'm going to mark halfway in between each of those. And that's going to be how many spokes I do. And you can always do more or less. So we're going to go down here at the outside. I'm going to hold my thread. We're going to come down. What I want here, since we're working on a curved line, I want to try and be as perpendicular to that spot on that curve as I can. And come up just inside of it. And then we're going to keep doing that all the way around. So down on my spot. Hold that thread perpendicular to your curve, come up just inside of it, down on the outside. We've done this quite a bit now, so I think you probably know the routine if you've watched any more of these videos. And then now should be the one that is straight up and down. So it should be perpendicular to our bottom seam. It might be slightly off since I was eyeballing all of my markings. You just want them to radiate nice and evenly from that center. So I'm going to come over here. And then I can take the one all the way here. So yeah, I think I got that center off just a little bit. So this next one, I'm going to eyeball it. I'm not going to mark it. I think I will probably be more accurate in the long run. And so remember, I'm coming up just inside of that, as though I've already been stitching around a circle. Again, I'm just kind of eyeballing. Where do I want my stitch? And if you're doing these in a row, then that stitch should be, you know, almost across from the other one. But I'm just going to stitch this one where I think it needs to go, not based on the other one. And let's see if one is more accurate than the other. And in looking at this, I'm wondering if I'm going to actually get an extra stitch in this one. We'll see. Maybe not. I think we're going to be right there. And I found that the more of these you do, the easier it is to just stitch them without having to mark everything out. If I need it to be a specific size, I mark it. If not, I sometimes will mark just the outer circle, but I don't usually mark the inner one. You just have to do what works for you. I'm trying to make sure I'm coming up right along that seam, and then I'm just going to go down right there. And see, I think that one actually came out more symmetrical than the other one. And that's one of the reasons I like stitching without the seam. That one is completely done. I can always remove my marks now, or I'm going to keep stitching some, so I may remove them all at the end here, and then we'll take a look. So let me knot it, and I will be back. So now we're going to work on different buttonhole motifs. I am going to mark the outer circles for these. Let's start with one over here. I'm thinking maybe about this size here. I want to be able to really see it in what we're doing. Now I'm going to just take a look at where my lines cross and put a little dot in the center. So for this buttonhole wheel, I'm going to start on the outside. Our base is going to be around the outside, and we're going to stitch in towards the center. I'm using this nice pink and green variegated thread. It's a DMC Coloris thread, and it's linked in the description box below if you're interested in getting that thread. So we're going to start right off with a buttonhole stitch, and we're always stitching directly into the center. So think perpendicular from that outer wheel. Try not to go sideways, which will change your center. We're going to think about putting those inside stitches around our dot. We want them pretty close, but we don't want them exactly there. You can hold it and see where you need to go and go down, or you can just eyeball it like I do. And these are ones that I think get easier the more you do them. And I'm not going to worry about how many stitches or that my spokes are exactly opposite, because I want you to think about using this almost as a floral motif. And flowers are rarely 100% symmetrical. And I can see that I had that one thread that was a little loose there. So I'm just trying to move my needle down and tighten that up if possible. And now we're going to go again around our center dot. It will look like they're all coming from the center, but they're not. And I'm going to scoop this one out here, putting my thread underneath the needle. And I obviously didn't get it straightened out quite enough. We'll just keep going with it, hoping that it goes. And again, I'm thinking around my dot, stitching out. And I'm trying to make these outer stitches all relatively even in length. And so pull it, but not tight enough to buckle that fabric. And again, I'm going really close to that previous stitch. Put your thread underneath the needle so you're going over it. That's what makes it a buttonhole stitch. And again, right next to the last stitch around that dot, going over my thread. There we go. And as I come around, because I'm in the frame, it's a little harder to scoop from different angles, so I'm going to switch over to stab stitching, but I'm still looking to be careful, and I'm looking at that and thinking that's not quite wide enough. So I just adjust my needle and move it over. Now, it might be too wide, that's all right. Again, right next to it, going around that dot. And then again, same thing, right next to it, not in the dot, just right around the outside edge of it. Do you see how my thread is catching? And so I'm just going to take that and pull that end over. And if it's really curling like that, it's going to continue to do that. And this is a good chance to really straighten that thread out where it's a little loose. So I'm going to bring my needle all the way down. Make sure we're all even down here. And I'm just going to run my fingers along that. I'm not really bringing my fingernails to it, but I'm just trying to edge that out. And now I'm going to bring the needle down, and hopefully that will bring out any other looseness in that thread. Now we're going to go back right around that dot. And coming up on that outer line. Right around. We're about halfway around now. And again, you can hold it out, see where you're at if you need to do that. My line is already fading, but there's still enough of it there for me to see. Hold it out, see where we're at. Up on the line. And I do find it helpful to have enough thread on your needle to complete the whole wheel, rather than having to change, especially if you're using a variegated thread. Because sometimes when you change threads, it's hard to get the match correct, and we want to see those variegations go nicely around that circle. It's looking like we're going to bunch up just a little bit here in the center at these last few stitches. We'll see what we can do. So I'm going to come just inside of where I was. Almost there. Now, again, just inside. And actually, well, that's all right. It'll work. If I had caught it in time, I could have threaded right through that other one. I didn't do that, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up. And I'm just going to go down and make sure I'm connecting right through that thread. And there we go. And so there is a buttonhole wheel. Now you see the spokes radiate nicely because we went around that little dot in the center, and they're not bunched or twisted, and that's the way I like to see these. Watch your tension on that outside. If you pull too tight, they get really wobbly. So you want to leave it just a smidgen looser to make that work. So that's our buttonhole wheel number 1. For our next buttonhole wheel, I'd like to do it down here. This one, we're going to do similar to this, but instead of bringing it all the way to the center, we're going to do it more like this, bringing it in part way. So let's see, I think I used a 7/8 inch. Do we want to do the same size? I like to vary it up so it doesn't all look exactly the same. Actually, I wonder, let's go even a little bit bigger on that one. So I'm looking at where my seam is, which is right in here. And I just sort of want to center it in that block. And as I've said in previous videos, it's a lot easier if you're doing this when it's not up on the frame. That definitely is going to help. And then this one, I'm not going to draw the inner circle, but I'm really going to work at eyeballing where that goes to. And I think, let's use this solid rose colored thread here. Now, like this one, we're going to go ahead and start on the outside here. It doesn't matter where you start. I'm going to do it the same way. I'm going to eyeball it, and I'm not going to mark each individual stitch. And I'm going to say I want to come in what is probably maybe 3/8 of an inch on this one. It might be a little more, it might be a little less. I'm just looking at that. If I came in where I thought I was going to, you see that sideways, and I really want it to be perpendicular. So think about keeping that perpendicular to that outer line as much as possible. So I'm going to come up, and then we're going to just go over that thread again. And we're going to do the same thing all the way around. But this time, because we are radiating but not going to the center, I don't have that center to mark. So maybe we do need to mark that center just to make it a little easier to keep it nice and even. I'm going to mark our center like we did on the other one. I'm just kind of lining up the lines here and going right in the center. And that will help me place this other mark. I don't want it too small is the thing. I'm thinking about 3/8 of an inch. And again, I'm using the lines on the template to help me line that up. I want that right in the center, so it should line up this way, should line up that way, and then I can make my mark. And it may be off just a little bit, and that's fine. So I'll look at where I took that last stitch, and I came just inside of that, and I will continue to do that as we go around. I don't want this too tight here. And you know, I'm just looking at this and realized I got it crooked again. I'm not coming perpendicular from the outside toward the center. So I'm going to take that out. And let's redo that one because that was going to make that a really twisty looking wheel. So again, we're coming up where the base is. I'm looking at that and that wheel is not centered. Oh my gosh. Let's try this one more time here. Comes across. That's right that way. Maybe needs to be over just a smidgen. And then let's line that up. Yeah, that was off. I was definitely off on that. Is that better? That still looks off. And that may be because when I'm drawing on this, the fabric gives, and so it distorts it a little bit. I'm thinking, how far over do I want to come? I'm trying to line up toward that center mark and coming out. So it is helpful to have that center mark there. Keeping perpendicular, going out, put my thread over so I can come out over the top of it. And we're going to just keep doing that same thing all the way around. So you can see how I'm lining up with that center and looking for that perpendicular look to that outer circle. And then I replace my needle, keeping it in the same line with it. And that looks like it's working pretty well. Again, I'm just trying to keep the outside stitches roughly even length. I haven't measured it. I could work left-handed. I'm not ambidextrous, but scoop stitching that way is really hard for me. So I'm going to still kind of line up, mark it, and I'm just going to kind of fudge with it here till I get it looking right, and then we're going to bring that thread under the needle. So we stitch over. I'm going to go down. And again, I'm trying to line up with that, and I feel like we're getting really big here. And I don't like that stitch, so I'm going to take it out and redo it. I was too far off at the base, and it just did not look right to me. So let's go more there. I'm happier with that. I think that looks better. And I pulled that too tight. See how it popped back? If it's too tight, that's what it will do. And if you have the tension correct, it won't pop back over. So if it's popping back over, loosen your stitch up. You can see how I rotated my needle there to accommodate where that perpendicular is and to not get that stitch too big. And we're going to do the same thing here. Just pull it out. Whoops. Hold it in line. I'm just going to bring it back to that inner curve and that too far. Go inside. I think this needle feels like it's a little bit warped, so it's one I've obviously been using quite a bit. And it impacts my accuracy with a stitch like this one, so it might be time to retire this needle or save it for something that doesn't need quite as much precision. Again, I'm just holding my thread out, coming up on the inside of it. And as you look at this stitch, you realize it's just ripe for all sorts of design possibilities. Think about putting a little button in the center there, a fancy bead. You could do another stitch on the inside of it. And there's nothing that says that you need to stop with just one stitch. I love building stitches on top of one another, so even stitching around the outside with something else. Alright, there we are up on the line. And now this one, I'm going to try and do what I didn't do over there. Let's thread under that very first stitch. I'm using the back of the needle just to make it a little bit easier so I don't catch the fabric. And then I'm going to go down on that inner line. And that wheel is complete. I just need to knot it on the back. Now we're going to do 2 more wheels here. And this time, instead of stitching towards the center, we're going to stitch from the center out. Let's start with one out here. Let's actually start with that inner small wheel, and I think that will be easier to get it. So I have to think about how big of an opening do I want. We did 3/8 of an inch here. I don't want to copy the exact same spacing on all of these, so I do want to vary it somewhat. It's going to have a different look regardless because we're doing, and I have to watch where my seam is. So here's my seam, top and bottom. So I'm going to go about in the center there. Do I want to go that big in the middle of it? I don't. I think I actually want to go pretty small. Let's go 1/4 of an inch. Just because I thought that it helped to have that center dot, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And now I want to put in my outer circle. And let's go with a 3/4 inch. So it'll be a little different size than what we've done previously. That's pretty close to center. It's not exact. I think it'll do. Now, I told you before, I like working with a full length of thread because I don't want to have to stop halfway around on one of these, especially if we're using variegateds. We have this bit of peachy pink embroidery floss. It's 3 strands. This time, instead of going from the outside in, we're going to go from the inside out. Remember that where the base of our stitch is always where we're coming up, and then the outside of the stitch is where we're going down. So it doesn't matter where I start. I still want to keep that perpendicular feeling going. Oh, and I'm going to start off wrong already here. Hold on. You'd think I've never stitched these stitches before. I know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to actually go in and take a straight stitch down, because otherwise I'm going to end up with a gap here. And then I'm going to come back up, and that just helps give me that initial guideline so that I know I'm coming up where I want to be. And now we're going to be still working perpendicular from that line, so I'm going down on that outer. Get my thread untwisted here, and see, I can just line it up with that dot in the center, and I'm going to come up just inside of it on that inner circle. And then we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to just line up, come up inside on that inner circle, and then the next one over. Once you've done a few of these, now see, I've just gotten a knot here, and I got the comment last time that some people would like to see how I solve these knot issues. This is really just the thread getting tangled around, so a lot of times if you grab that loop you can pull it out, and if it doesn't pull real quick, then go in between. Let's see if I can. Every knot is different, so it depends on what it is. So this one, it looks like it's gotten twisted around. And that is exactly what has happened here. Sometimes having a light with a good magnifier on it can help. Okay, so here I pulled that loop and pulled it right down the thread, and it just pops right out. And that's the knot you always hope for, because that's the easy one to get out. But it happens just because the thread is twisting around itself underneath. Now these stitches are really close together, so you have to watch and make sure they're not going to be bunching up too much. You want to watch your tension there on the inside. Again, I'm just going to pull it so I can see where it needs to go on the inside. The outside, you get the feel, you know, how far apart they need to be, but it's that inside one where it's sometimes a little harder to tell. And there was one of those that started to twist again. And so you can see these inside ones are really close together here. And I'm just trying to take stitches about the same distance apart on the outside, come up inside, and they're really just right next to one another on the inside. So these make great flowers, and I've done them big and I've done them small. And I like them both ways. Again, you've got this nice little circle in the center, so you can think about what you want to do in the center of that. You could fill it with French knots. You could put a button or a bead there. And I really want to be over a little more, so I'm really stitching these close together on the inside because we've got that small circle on the inside. The bigger the circle, the bigger the stitches will be. But just keep lining up to that center point. Try not to stitch through your thread. And so remember also, when you're doing this, you're not pulling the base thread, you're always pulling where the loose edge is back. So once I get it down pretty close, then that's when I can bring it back. Now I'm going to go ahead and try and put 2 in there. Okay, and then we're lining up with that dot. Go just inside it. And now we're going to come over. We had our straight stitch in there, and I'm going to go in and attach to that first base of the buttonhole stitch. And there we are. There is a flower from the inside to the outside. Technically, we're stitching buttonhole wheels, not flowers, but they can be whatever you want them to be. Now this is another one that, like this one, is going to work from the inside to the out. But this time, instead of making the rays all the exact same size, we're going to vary the length of them. I'm trying to think how big I want in here. I feel like we're getting all the same size. Let's actually go a little smaller on this one. And I think we're going to just do it straight over that line here. Normally I'd love to do that up, but I'm kind of fighting the frame here. I've got my finger under it so it's not going down. And then let's go just a really tiny circle. And again, I'm using my fingers. So this is just a guideline. We might be in or out from that a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about it. We're going to start off the same way with this one. I'm going to make a straight stitch. I feel like this one looks better if I begin it with that straight stitch. I don't know that you really need to do that, but it helps establish my perpendicular, and maybe we need to put that dot in the center again. Let's just eyeball it right there and see if that helps keep everything nice and straight. Let's go ahead and put that here. So this is going to be a long one. And then again, we're going to come up just on the inside of that. And now this time we're going to go down on the other side, and it's quite a bit shorter. And so we're still lining up to that center dot and stitching around that inner seam. I don't usually mark these. I sometimes will mark the outer circle, but I don't always. Sorry, I know the shadows are pretty strong in here today. Stitching this a little later in the day than I typically do. I'm trying to get every stitch to have similar tension on it. And I don't always keep these the exact same length, because a lot of times when you see flowers or things with rays that are different lengths, they do vary a little bit. Again, always lining up to that center dot from the outside. That's what'll keep it nice and perpendicular and keep you from veering off to one side or the other. So line up with center dot, come up on the inner circle right inside the thread. I have done these with many different lengths of rays, so it just depends on the look that you're going for. We're keeping it simple for the purpose of the sampler, but hopefully it will help give you ideas to jump off and make things your own as you go. That's always my hope, that you'll figure out ways to customize it to what you need. Now that one almost disappeared because it was right on the seam. That might be one that I come back to and make that just a little more exaggerated to help make it look like it's really there. Again, I'm just always coming up and lining that with that center dot. And actually I think that's going to be the last one on here. Let's come back up. Yeah, I was going to come up too far. I had to line it back up with the center. And now we're going to go and join that to that first buttonhole base. And I'm going to come back over here and let's just, because you just can't see it, and I think if we bring it out a little bit further, that might help. There, you can see it. The color might be a little bit different, but there we've got one with a variegated rays. And you can see the possibilities of that as we go. So let me knot that off. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make just a teeny tiny circle here. And we're going to make one that's really this type, but this time we're going to have it so that it skews. The base is going to be on the outside. So we're going to come up out here. Instead of going to the center, now I want to go to the side a little bit. As I radiate around here, I want these to skew a little bit. And it just provides a slightly different appearance. And I'm just trying to take roughly the same amount of stitch and trying to come out about the same distance. I'm not coming at all perpendicular here on these. I'm definitely coming over to the side. And almost forgot what I was doing there. Well, and I pulled it too tight. The other one is correct. Let's pull that back out. And now I can actually go underneath this first one that I did. But I need to remember to take it in up here. Now it's not super noticeable that it skews, but it has sort of a turning wheel effect, and I like that one. I often will use that as a filler flower in my pieces. I'll show you some examples here of some of these that I've been doing. So I have some of these little turning ones on the cover of my journal. Where else could we put another one? I feel like we need to put something nearly on the line. And this time we're going to make just a little tiny one similar to this. I'm going to put just a teeny tiny circle here. I'm just going to roughly draw a circle. I can see it. It may not be really obvious on camera. Up at the base. So the base on this one is going to hardly be noticeable. I'm going to work at the other direction just because that's what's going to work for me here. I'm not going to worry too much about trying to be perpendicular. I just want to stitch around that little circle. So this is more how I typically work. And these make fun little flowers. And so these might have a little bit of that twisting motion in it, and I forgot to go under that one. Now I have a kitty scratching at the door. Well, we're working in such tight quarters down here that it's hard to see. And we're definitely turning. I don't know if you can see that twisting motion developing in this one. And I think I just stitched through my thread on the back. No, there we are. Just sort of felt my way along. So I'm still doing a buttonhole around that center. It's as close together as I can get it. I think we can get a couple more in here. If I can see where my needle's coming up, will be good. And I'm going to do one more here. And then I'm going to go down and attach it into that first one. And so you just get this nice little puff with a little bit of a center in it. And to me, it's very reminiscent of things like dandelion heads or some of those little puffs that you see on various weeds and stuff. So it's a really good filler flower. So let me knot that off and we will take a look, because I think we are finished with this block. Here is our block of buttonhole wheels, and we have 3 varieties with the spokes going in towards the center, and then the rest of them all radiate outward. And that includes this Rosette Stitch. I do like it more with 6 than I did with 5. I like this one, you know, it's sort of sunset-like or flower rays, however you want to look at it. I like this one. I use this one a fair amount. I've used all of these on multiple occasions. Now we talked briefly as I was stitching about what you could do for embellishing centers, and I've got a couple of little buttons here, so you can imagine putting a little button in the middle of it, or a bigger button. There's so many possibilities of things you could do. Even on the one that comes all the way in, it still has a little different appearance. So there are lots of fun things. You could put beads in them, beads on the outside. Lots of possibilities with this one. Well, that is the last of our buttonhole blocks for this sampler project. Next week we're going to be starting with chain stitch. I think we're going to have 6 weeks on chain stitch. I hope you've enjoyed all these different buttonhole stitches. There are still so many options of buttonhole variations that you can do that we haven't even touched on. We can't do them all. There's just not enough time to do them all. We'd spend the whole year doing nothing but stitching buttonhole stitch, and I know there are a lot of other stitches that I would love to share with you. So we're going to try and stick to the ones that are suitable for crazy quilting in these videos, because that's what this is a channel really focused on crazy quilting. And I hope that you've been having fun stitching along and enjoying these. So we'll keep going next time with more stitching, but we're going to switch to chain stitch. Thank you for being here. I deeply appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a beautiful day, happy stitching, and I will see you in the next video.